Welcome to another Mixed Media Monday. I'm Eric Scott, and as always, as I do every Monday, I'm coming just to share a little mixed media artwork with you, show you how easy it is to share some new ideas, or just to encourage you to do your own thing and make your own art. So today I'm going to continue with the limitations. The last couple episodes, I've sort of limited the materials that I've been working with. And I want to do that even further today. So I'm going to stick with the black and white, the monochromatic color scheme, but I'm going to even limit my materials even a bit further. So anyway, if you want to work along, awesome. If you just want to watch, that's great too. And as always, this is just to kind of encourage people to explore their creativity. And sometimes it's just nice to have a place to come and sit down and have somebody kind of walk you through or talk you through things, or just to have, just to kind of set aside some time for your own making. So that's why I'm doing this, is just so that you can have some time, sort of like, we're just sitting down making artwork together. That's always kind of my goal of this. So anyway, let's go ahead and get started. I'll switch it over and we'll get working. All right, I've got a slightly larger piece of paper. This is the same Strathmore 400 series mixed media paper. It's a 6x8 piece of paper straight out of the tablet, and I've got the ink black Inktense pencil from Derwent. I've got some paint brushes. I've got my black pen and my white pen, and I do have some collage material sort of out of frame. So probably use that. What I wanted to do, I first was getting out the paint, and I thought, you know what if I just use the pencil? Because sometimes maybe that's all you have, or you want to really limit yourself. What you can do with paint, you can sort of do with just pencil. So I'm going to build up layers with just the pencil and kind of do several layers. I'm going to start off with just kind of having some color down. So I'm going to hold it real loose, hold it under my hand so that I can use more of the side of the pencil. And I'm just going to kind of let the pencil dance around, not really scribbling. I mean, I would consider this like a scribbling kind of mark, but a lot of times whenever we think of scribble, when I taught little kids, they would always call it scribble scrabble. And, it's basically whenever you just go all over the place and you're not really paying attention. This is a bit more, this has a bit more intention behind it. And it's not just kind of super random, really scribbly, like little kids scribble like that, scribble scrabble. Anyway, so I'm doing this real light. I'm not pressing really hard. And so that way I'm going to end up with a lighter value. I don't put as much pigment on it. And I've left lots of white places. So that way, whenever I use my paintbrush, it's going to spread that Inktense pencil around, but it's never going to be super black. It's going to just have a nice light gray. And that's exactly what I want. In some areas where there was a little bit more pigment, it's going to be a little bit darker. Of course, I keep dipping my brush in the water just to get more water. That's going to keep it kind of light. Now, I'm not worrying about trying to get rid of all these little like scribble marks, all these little pencil marks. I probably won't be able to get rid of all of them, but that's okay. It's just going to add a little bit of texture as I work. Now I've covered up all the white spots because then I'm going to add that back with the pen and with maybe some of the collage materials. All right, that's nice and wet. So I want to go ahead and dry it, pull out the hair dryer, and Okay. And by turning it over and hitting it with the hairdryer on the back helps to flatten it out. So I'm going to go back to this pencil. And what I want to do is put a little bit of structure into it. And I'm going to go back to my standard kind of squares and rectangles. And I'm barely touching the paper. I don't want to have a lot of pigment. And that's the key to building up layers with a single color of water soluble pencil. So whether you're using the Inktense or you're using water soluble graphite or you're using watercolor pencils, you can use a single pencil and really build up some nice layers. And it's about working light to dark. So I have a light gray for the background. Now I'm kind of trying to get into a more of a medium gray, maybe a lighter gray that's a little bit darker than what's on my paper right now. But I'm using that technique that I go back to over and over again, that idea of creating the shapes and shading into the background, into the negative space. It's just, I don't know, it's just something that I really enjoy doing. So anyway, but just a little bit of shading because I'm going to rely on the water to really spread it out. And I like using the brushes with the straight tips. Then that way I can just go perpendicular to the rectangle or square. And what I love about working with the small papers is that it's easier to spin the paper around than trying to like work in different angles with the brush. So you can see how this layer is still pretty light, but it has a little bit of definition along the where the squares are. So again, the pencil that I'm using is an ink black pencil. And the reason I'm using that is that I can get those really dark values, but this would be really interesting if you were using like an indigo blue, that really dark blue, a dark green, really any kind of dark color. It's really going to work well. If you're using like a light orange or like a yellow oak, or not, yeah, like a light orange or a yellow or a yellow ochre, you might not be able to get as many layers just because those are light colors to begin with. So any kind of dark, a purple, nice dark purple. All right, so getting a simple composition going, go ahead and hit that with my hair dryer. Okay. So I got that going. Now I'm going to kind of introduce some white back into it by using the security envelope. I'm just going to tear bits and pieces from this. Okay, win this, some glue. Yeah, the security envelopes are something I use a lot, and it's just the idea of repurposing. You get your bills and such, and you're always left with the envelope, or a lot of us pay online, so you still get the paper bill, and it's like, oh well, instead of just putting this into the trash or into recycling, it's like, oh, I can use this. And it's like it seems like every company kind of has their own kind of patterns. In lots of different colors. This happens to fit my color scheme. One thing I am trying to do is to keep this kind of pattern perpendicular and parallel to the edges. Okay. So even though the glue stick is pretty low moisture, there's still moisture in it. And I'm gonna go ahead and hit this with, hit this with my hair dryer and dry it. And that's gonna help it stick, especially if I paint over top of it again. Just hit it a little bit. Okay. I'll go ahead and trim the ends. When I trim the ends off where it goes over, if I flip it over, I can just use the edge of the paper as a guide and just snip those right off. What's interesting at this stage is that really this could go any way. I can have it this way, the way I've been working on it. It could go sideways, it could go this way. I tend to kind of, the way I work on it tends to be the way I see it. So I'm going to keep it this way. I'm going to grab a really thin, this is the extra super fine pen. I've got lots of straight lines, and even the patterns are very straight, but I do like the rips. So I'm going to kind of echo the edges of the ripped collage and add some organic lines. And those of you that tune in know that I use mapping marks a lot. And so these organic, curvy, uneven lines really are meant to be road-like, and that creating kind of a map-like structure on the work is something that I do a lot. That's the thing, is that as you work, some people get really concerned about like, oh, I'm trying to find my style, like trying to find the thing that I do that sets me apart. And the only way you get to that point is that you just make a lot of work. And what happens is that you make work and then you start to say, oh, I really like this. Oh, I really like that. And sometimes it is very conscious. You say to yourself, oh, I really like that. I think I'm going to keep doing that. Or what happens, I think, more often than not, is that it's more subconscious, more unconscious, that you just like you do stuff and then later on you're like, oh, I use those types of lines a lot. And then it kind of moves into that conscious place. So anyway, all right, so there's that. I am gonna grab some other collage. I'm thinking one of the reasons I grabbed one of the big papers is that I I was thinking about using one of these brains last week, but it was just kind of too big for the little piece. And I did not cut that straight. Let's try this one. Not that it matters if it's straight or not, but I do kind of want it to be pretty straight and pretty even. There we go. That's a little bit better. I'm going to keep it as a rectangle. And the reason is just because the rest of the paper's rectangles, and I have lots of rectangles on it. So I was just kind of thinking like that could be a nice rectangle. And so I think last week I was talking about kind of composition and the rule of thirds. So really this could kind of go, I mean, if I put it smack dab in the middle, you know, it gets kind of boring. It's kind of like a target, but when it's off in one of these corners, I kind of like it in the bottom corner here. All right, so switch this page. So now I have this really dark black, and that really becomes my focal point. Number one, because it's very dark, very contrasting, sticks out. It's very different. It's an image, so I'm really drawn to it. But I do want to kind of balance that out. So while that dries, I'm going to pull out my thicker black pen. And I think what I want to do is I'm going to go back to some circles. And just going to start off by drawing a series of circles. All right. But I want to really kind of draw attention to the circle. So like here in the brain where it's like just really thick, dark black, it's kind of what I want to do. I want to have some nice thick lines. And so what that does, you know, it echoes those dark, stark blacks in the brain, helps to start to balance it out. So this still stays my center of interest, my focal point. This starts to help balance it out. I'll add some more black and some other dark values here in a little bit. I'm going to turn back to my pencil. And one of the things I want to do is I'm going to shade around the circles. And so this is going to bring a little bit more focus to the circles. I'm trying not to like completely steal the focus from the brain, but this will just kind of darken. So the idea is to darken this a little bit, make this a little bit darker, make that stand out more. So I am pressing a little bit harder with the pencil, not super hard yet. I'm still not trying to get a dark velvety black. And then I'm just going to take a round brush. And I want to spread this out a little bit. Actually, I want to spread it out over onto the brain just to get a little bit of that pigment on there. It'll help kind of push that white rectangle down into the collage a little bit more. Now the thing is with that printer paper and with the security envelope, it really sucks up the water. So it goes a little bit darker than what it really is. So right now it's kind of hard to tell exactly what the effect is. But we'll hit it with the hair dryer and then that'll give us a good idea. Okay. This is feeling very empty up here. So I think what I want to do, actually not really sure what I want to do. So I like this rectangle here. Let's go ahead. I want to pull it out a little bit more, even though I worked to paint over it. That just sort of pushes it down into the piece a little bit more. I think I want to go ahead and really draw some emphasis to that. Okay, and then what I was thinking, I want to pull or draw a line up this way. It's just going to help kind of cut that space, divide that space up. Go all the way down. And a noisy helicopter flying over. I just was looking in like this line right here kind of lines straight up with that circle, and then over here I can come over to here And this is a pretty obvious kind of idea, is that these lines crisscross right here. So you look right there. So maybe just trying to think, like, this still feels pretty empty. I think what I'll do, just to echo those circles. It's like I don't think I want something so formal, but I'm thinking just a variety of close together circles, some big and some little, just to help break up this space a little bit more. Of course, if I just put that there, then it looks kind of weird. So I'm going to do it in a couple more places just to help balance it out. So this has been kind of interesting because this paper is much bigger than I've been working on. So that kind of gives me a challenge. And then that challenge of even limiting myself more with the materials that I'm using. And I think maybe right up here. And as always, I'm not focusing on making a masterpiece. But what I find interesting, though, is that a lot of times whenever we do these kind of quick things, and we might think like, oh, well, I could have done this better, I could have done that better, it can really appeal to other people. I don't know how many times I've sold pieces of artwork that I was just sort of like, they weren't my favorites, or there were things about it that I was like, oh, I'm not really sure about that. And then other people are like, oh no, I love it. It's like, okay. So anyway, that kind of helps balance it out, kind of breaks up this space. Um, and so I think I'm going to call this one finished, and I'll sign it. And there we go. All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. Again, just kind of limiting myself even further. It's like, how much can I simplify this approach? So kind of sticking with that monochromatic, that black and white color scheme, that was the big limitation. This time I took away the paint, so using the water soluble pencil, the Inktense pencil, to build up those layers, to add the variety of values that I wanted. Um, yeah, and just trying to something a little bit bigger and seeing how that turns out. So um, anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. As always, you can check me out online. I've got my website. I'm on social media, and if you have been really enjoying the series, or you enjoy these videos, feel free to share them. Post them on social media. Share them with your family, your friends, your colleagues, your students, whatever. But I feel like everybody's creative, and it's easy to start diving in and experimenting and trying things out. And sometimes things turn out great, other times they don't. But we're always learning, we're always growing, we're always becoming better. We're really tapping into that creativity and trying out different things. So I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you tuning in. And yeah, happy, and as always, happy creating.